My husband, M36, and I, F35, had been married for just under 2 months, though we'd been together for 4 years. I was deeply in love with him, and I genuinely believed he felt the same. Aside from the typical minor arguments about chores and boring everyday stuff, we were solid. He never voiced any real complaints ever. Our sex life was amazing, or so he claimed regularly. He used to text me steamy messages while we were both at work, the kind that would make me turn red in my office chair. Last Friday, I only had a short morning meeting, and afterward, my coworkers and I went out for lunch. We checked in with our supervisor, and she said it was fine to head home early. That's when everything changed. I walked in and found my husband in our bed with another woman. I panicked and ran out in shock. He didn't even have time to stop me before I was in the elevator. I got away before he could fully dress. He's been calling and texting nonstop all weekend. I've been staying with my brother and his wife. They don't know the full story, just that my husband cheated. This morning, he showed up at their door, begging to talk. He asked my brother for a chance to speak with me. My brother offered to kick him out, but now that the initial shock had passed, I figured maybe I should at least hear what he had to say. My brother, sister-in-law, and baby nephew left for brunch to give us space. My husband looked like a mess, like he'd been crying for days. He tried to hug me, but I told him to stay behind the kitchen island. If he came any closer, I swore I'd scream. He started with some half-hearted apology before getting to the real reason he claimed he cheated. According to him, I never made an effort for him. He said I always wore comfy, unsexy underwear and that it was a turn-off. That made him feel like I didn't care about our relationship. I was stunned. Completely confused. Why didn't he just say something? Why not buy me lingerie himself like many men do? He said he didn't want to offend me by criticizing my underwear. So basically, it was my fault he cheated. I asked if that's what he was saying, and he didn't even deny it, just stood there crying. I tried to remember what the woman was wearing that day, but I couldn't. The moment I saw them, everything blurred. He asked me what I wanted to do next and said we could work through this. He offered to tell me more about the woman, said she didn't mean anything. I cut him off and told him I didn't need to know more. I said I needed time to think, even though I already knew I was done. I just didn't want him lingering around, trying to beg, argue, and cry his way into staying longer. Now he's gone, and I don't even know how I feel. I never imagined underwear could be such a deal-breaker in a marriage. I love soft, neutral cotton, mostly Calvin Klein basics. I have a large chest, and sexy bras are honestly a nightmare. They're uncomfortable, always need adjusting, and don't support me well. Anyone with a bigger chest will get what I mean. Plus, when I wear anything that outlines my shape, I get unwelcome stares from men and women. But I never felt unattractive in my favorite underwear. Not once. I love my body. I work out for an hour and a half each day and feel good in my skin. And how could he say he wasn't satisfied with our sex life? We were intimate 4 times a week, at least. Was it all fake when he said I drove him wild? That one look from me could get him going? I'll never understand how men think. He gave me this fake sense of confidence, and now I find out it was built on nothing. And why now? Why did I have to walk in on them just 2 months after we got married? Why not 2 months ago, before the vows? Now I've got to find a lawyer and deal with a drawn-out divorce that could take years. Screw you. Seriously. I hope karma finds you in your sexy little red lace G-string. Update: my husband said he cheated because of my underwear. Hey again. After the overwhelming support I got last time, I decided to post an update. I didn't see my original post saved anywhere, but thankfully I had the draft backed up on my phone. So, I talked to a lawyer. Turns out annulment isn't an option, even though we've been married for such a short time. So I filed for divorce. My husband lost it. He was furious, accusing me of moving on too quickly without giving him a real chance to explain. But what else is there to say? He texted me that this couldn't be how it ends, that if he'd known our last kiss was going to be our last, he would have held me longer. But that's rich coming from someone who was in our bed with another woman just hours later. So no, I'm not moved by his romantic regrets. Some of my family members also think I might be acting too fast. Even my brother, who's been letting me stay at his place, told me I could stay as long as I needed so I wouldn't rush into any decisions. That honestly hurt. My mother-in-law also called a few times, apologizing and asking how I was doing, but it quickly became clear she had an agenda. She's worried about the financial side of the divorce. She asked if I thought being married less than 2 months would entitle me to any of my husband's assets. Truth is, I don't know. I haven't had the property division talk with my lawyer yet. My husband bought our apartment before we got married, and he also owns a few rental properties and a little lake cabin. I get why she's concerned. I don't even feel comfortable asking for half, given how short the marriage was. But yesterday he crossed another line. As if cheating wasn't enough, I found out just how petty he could be. He sent a delivery to my brother's place, a gift-wrapped box with beautiful lace underwear inside, in my size. Thankfully, my brother and sister-in-law were out for their usual Sunday walk and brunch. I collapsed in tears the moment I opened it. I cried for 2 straight hours. Eventually, I pulled myself together. I knew this would be his next move: lash out, then regret it and try to crawl back. Sure enough, he came back around, asking my brother where I was since I hadn't been answering his calls or messages. I muted my phone, so I didn't see the 50+ texts he sent. When my brother got home, I told him I needed to see my best friend and asked him not to tell my husband where I was. He noticed my eyes were puffy but respected my space. I just told him my husband did something cruel and would probably come around again trying to say sorry. And I was right. My husband even showed up at my workplace today, hoping to see me. I'd already called in sick. I'm so wrecked. I cry every time I'm alone. Why wasn't cheating in our bed the one place I felt safest enough pain for him? Why did he feel the need to keep hurting me? All because I followed my heart and filed for divorce? I thought he knew me. I thought he understood that I always lead with my heart, or else I never would have married him. I came so close to putting on that lingerie and blasting pics on Instagram. Or better yet, showing off my gray Calvin Klein cotton set. I still look amazing. After a while, I snapped out of it and set my phone down. But I kept wondering, will this pain ever stop? Then, I'll admit, I did something a little petty. I posted an Instagram story wearing my favorite Calvin Klein underwear, face cropped out, set to Beyoncé's Cozy. I already know I'll probably cringe at myself later, but in that moment, it gave me a jolt of power. As for the lingerie he sent me yesterday, I'm not going to burn it, return it, or cut it up dramatically. Nope. I'm keeping it. And the next time I have sex, I'm wearing it. Pretty sure that's what he had in mind anyway, so I might as well let it serve its purpose. Just, not in the way he hoped. Also, I'm not American. Where I come from, it doesn't matter if someone owns something before or after marriage, everything gets split 50-50ths. Joint property includes everything, even if it's only in one person's name. My husband doesn't seem too stressed about that yet, probably because he's too busy trying to figure out how to stop the divorce entirely. His family, on the other hand? They're being a lot more vocal about it. They're even trying to push for an annulment now. Here's one final petty update. I spoke with my husband again. We discussed the practical stuff, and I told him from now on, he should talk to my lawyer instead of me. He asked if we could meet face to face, but I told him no. Then he brought up the underwear post on Instagram. Said he knew that was aimed at him. He apologized for making me feel the way I did and claimed he always thought I was beautiful, that it was never about my underwear. I told him, yeah, I know. He said he regretted sending me the lingerie and admitted he did it out of anger. Again, I just said, I know. Then he asked me to toss them or burn them, told me I'd look gorgeous even in a potato sack. I smiled and told him I'd be wearing them the next time I slept with someone, and when I did, I'd remember him and be grateful for the confidence boost. He went quiet for a few seconds, then said, I guess I deserve that. I've been crying since this morning. I feel like I'm acting like a teenager fighting some silly, bitter battle, but honestly, I'm done now. There's nothing left to say. That part of my life is over. Now, shifting gears, here's a different story I've been meaning to get off my chest. Am I the jerk for being angry my parents got my brother a car for his 18th, but not me, and then the whole family got involved? Okay, I know how that sounds. Spoiled, right? But just hear me out. My brother is 20 now. When he turned 18, my parents gave him a car. It wasn't anything flashy, just an older Lexus, about 20 years old, but it was still in great shape. And of course, he flaunted it every chance he got all through his senior year. Now, here's the thing, I've always gotten grades just as good as his, even better sometimes. I've worked my butt off. I even volunteered to help clean up our local park and streets, hoping my effort would count for something. I was really hoping for the same gesture on my 18th birthday. Not a new car, not anything fancy, just something dependable, like my brother got. But my birthday came and went a few weeks ago, and there was no car. The party itself felt like a letdown. For my brother, my mom baked this amazing layered chocolate pudding cake. For me? A plain sheet cake from the grocery store. He had a DJ at his party. Mine had my dad's old boombox and a stack of burnt CDs throughout the party. I kept thinking maybe they were saving the big surprise for the end. But nope, nothing came. As things were winding down, I finally asked why there was no car. They told me, pretty bluntly, that they felt my brother had earned it more. I was floored. I asked what exactly he did that I hadn't done. I mean, I literally checked all the same boxes, and then some. My grandma overheard the whole thing. She jumped in, furious, and told them she was deeply disappointed in the way they were clearly playing favorites. Then, in front of everyone who was still there, she straight up called them out for how different they made our birthdays. My uncle was the first to back her up, and one by one, other family members chimed in. I just walked off and went to my room. I didn't want to deal with any of it. A few relatives called later to apologize and show support. My grandparents ended up taking me out for dinner that night to help me cool off. But when I got home, my parents were furious. They told me I embarrassed them in front of everyone. I didn't even respond. I just walked past them in silence. For weeks, we barely said a word to each other. Then, a few days ago, they handed me a surprise, a white 1998 Subaru Legacy. It runs great. They tossed me an envelope with the keys and the title, told me to have fun, and walked away. They're also covering the insurance for 6 months, just like they did with my brother. And yeah, I'm grateful. I know a car is a privilege, not a right. But it feels like I kind of guilted them into doing it. Like I blackmailed them with family shame. So now I'm wondering, am I the jerk for how it all played out? Edit, some clarifications. Just to clarify a few things, my parents aren't struggling financially. They're not extravagant, but they live comfortably. If anything's putting a dent in their finances right now, it's my brother's college tuition. He got a partial scholarship, and they're paying the rest. I'm not asking them to do the same for me. I'm planning to work and take care of my own student loans. Also, this isn't about gender. I'm a guy, just like my brother. The bill of sale for my car says it cost $1,600. The Lexus they bought for my brother? That was closer to $3,000, if I remember right. But for me, it's not about the money. I actually love the Subaru. I told my parents how much I appreciate it, but they didn't really react. When I thanked them, they barely looked at me. Just turned and went back inside. It honestly felt like they were letting some entitled brat play with a shiny toy. That stung more than I expected. And yeah, it's one of the reasons I ended up writing all of this. The main reason I wanted that car so badly was because I literally couldn't get a part-time job without one. We live out in the middle of nowhere, and the closest public bus stop is more than 10 miles away. Anytime I needed to go anywhere, I had to ask for a ride. Now that I've got the Subaru, I've been planning to apply for a part-time job after school as soon as possible. Edit 3, since so many people brought it up, let me clear a few things up. When I confronted my parents after my birthday party, it wasn't in front of the entire family. I actually pulled them aside into a different room, away from everyone else. I didn't want to make a scene. But my grandma happened to overhear us, and she's the one who walked in and laid into my parents. That's what kicked off the whole mess. Update on the whole car situation. I hadn't logged into this account in months, but I figured now was the right time to give the rest of the story, especially before college starts. First, let me address the people who flooded my inbox with messages telling me I should have returned the car, or that I was spoiled, or that I should have just accepted my parents' behavior. Some even called me ungrateful for accepting anything from them at all. Look, I needed that car to get to work. Period. There was no way around it. I wasn't trying to be greedy, I just wanted the same chance my brother got. Anyway, I did get that part-time job. Eventually, it turned into full-time over the summer. But 3 weeks into working, the Subaru died. I was driving around 45 miles per hour on the highway when the temperature gauge spiked. I pulled over, and sure enough, the head gasket had blown. My grandparents checked it out and found gasket sealant residue still floating around in the coolant. Someone had clearly tried to patch the engine together before selling it. The car had been barely hanging on when my parents bought it. When I told them what happened, they claimed they didn't know anything about it. But their reaction? A shrug and a comment about how it was karma for forcing their hand on buying me the car in the first place. Yeah, they really said that. Unfortunately for them, my grandparents were standing right there. And they lost it. My grandma sent me to my room while she and the rest of the family handled it. I waited about 2 hours before they called me back into the living room. When I came out, my parents were slumped on the couch, looking like they'd just been emotionally bulldozed. My uncle and a couple of other relatives were there too. Apparently, my grandparents got the full story. My parents had bought the Subaru simply because it was the cheapest thing they could find nearby that was still running. They didn't get it inspected, didn't even read the full listing, just grabbed whatever was easy. My uncle, who knows his way around cars, checked it out and said the engine was toast. The warped head gasket meant it would need to be rebuilt, and that alone would cost more than the car was worth. I had to call my job and explain I couldn't come in because my only ride was now dead. They were understanding, but had to put me on unpaid leave. Now, here's where things took a turn I didn't expect. A few days later, my grandparents showed up with another car, a 1999 Honda Civic hatchback. White, like the Subaru. It had about 180,000 miles on it but drove great. Not all-wheel drive like before, but it was reliable and had way better fuel economy. They even brought a list of all the recent repairs, new radiator, tune-ups, everything. My uncle gave it a full inspection and gave the thumbs up. I was beyond thankful. I hugged everyone and thanked them 100 times. My parents? They didn't say much. They just kind of drifted away. This time, there wasn't even that smug, resentful vibe from earlier. They looked defeated. Like completely empty. When we eventually sold the Subaru for $400, my grandparents put that money into my savings. But that's only one part of what happened. Remember when I mentioned I did better in school than my brother? I wasn't exaggerating. He got a 30% scholarship for college. I got 50%. Different schools, but mine is just as good and it's closer to home too. My parents' reaction? Shock, first. Then disappointment. I wish I were kidding. I decided not to push the issue, but my grandma had other plans. She asked them point blank if they were happy for me. They mumbled that they were, but you could tell they didn't mean it. So she pushed harder. Asked them why it felt like they resented me for succeeding. Asked if they actually wanted me to fail. What was their problem? My dad couldn't even look me in the eye. My mom looked like she was about to cry. They eventually said they were proud of me and wanted me to do well in college. They also said they'd help cover some of my tuition, just like they were doing for my brother. My grandparents didn't let that slide. They told my parents that this kind of favoritism should have never existed in the first place. I thanked my parents for their help, got a half-hearted handshake from my dad and a super stiff hug from my mom. It all felt so forced. I am genuinely grateful for the help. For the car, for the tuition. But they've sucked all the warmth out of it. I couldn't help but ask my grandparents why my parents acted this way. Was I an accident or something? That's when they gave me the look, you know, the one. The "we should have told you sooner" look. No, I'm not adopted. But I was kind of an unplanned addition. My parents wanted 2 kids, specifically a boy and a girl. They had my brother first and were hoping I'd be the girl. They were so convinced that I would be that they didn't even find out my gender during pregnancy. Bought all girl stuff, planned for a daughter. Then I showed up. Another boy. My grandma told me that because they couldn't use any of the baby girl things they'd bought, I just wore my brother's hand-me-downs until I was about 3. From the start, I was a letdown in their eyes. She said she doesn't think they'll ever change at this point. They've been like this too long. Since then, my parents haven't really brought up college. In fact, they avoid the topic altogether. Some people messaged me after my first post and warned me to be cautious, and I took their advice seriously. I called the college and asked them to double-check with me directly if anyone ever calls or emails pretending to be me or trying to mess with my enrollment. I don't really think my parents would stoop that low, but I'd rather be safe. One surprise I never expected? My brother called me. Totally out of the blue. He said our grandparents had filled him in on everything. He apologized in his own way and told me he hoped that once I left, I would never have to come back. He also told me he's planning to stay in his current state after college. Our parents want him to move back, but he said he has no intention of doing that. I told him I understood. I might do the same. Our conversation was a little awkward, we don't really talk much, but I appreciated it. Then, last weekend, my grandparents and the rest of the family threw me a surprise party. It was just like my brother's 18th birthday. There was a DJ, a big homemade chocolate cake, and everyone showed up. I was so overwhelmed with gratitude. I must have said thank you 100 times. My parents showed up, but they barely participated. They sat in the back, didn't say much, just drank and looked miserable. Honestly, I think the party was partly meant to celebrate me, and partly to show my parents what they should have done in the first place. My grandma even said, "You're never too old to be taught some humility." As for me, my part-time job went full-time after graduation. I've been working hard, saving up for college. The pay isn't amazing, it's minimum wage, but it's something. I want to leave this job knowing I gave it my best before I hand in my 2 weeks. And this? This is probably the last update I'll make. I'm so exhausted from the online negativity after my original post. While most of the comments were kind and supportive, and to those people, thank you, seriously, you guys were amazing. There were also a handful of really bitter people who took it way too far. Some of the hate I got was wild. People projecting their own issues onto me, raging like they were personally offended. To the 95% who had my back, you rock. To the angry, foaming at the mouth 5%, please touch grass. I'm closing this chapter and focusing on what's ahead. I've got a future to build. One that's mine.